Welcome, discerning traveler, to the Afterdark Historian. As the day's concerns begin to recede and shadows lengthen into evening, we invite you to embark on a journey through the annals of the past. Tonight, we turn our gaze to a period of relentless ambition and arduous toil, to the mid-19th century, when the whisper of gold sparked a frenzy that reshaped a continent. Imagine a dream of instant wealth, a promise shimmering in the riverbeds of distant California. Thousands upon thousands abandoned their homes, their livelihoods, and their certainties, drawn by the irresistible lure of glittering nuggets. Yet, for the vast majority, the reality of the American gold rush was a harsh, unforgiving crucible, where dreams often dissolved into dust and despair. It was a place where basic survival was a daily triumph and fortune a fleeting illusion. Settle in and allow the gentle currents of history to carry you as we delve into the world of the Prospector, and perhaps uncover why even the most determined spirit might not have lasted a single week in the relentless pursuit of gold. Imagine yourself, if you will, not as an eager adventurer gazing upon a map, but as a prospector in the raw, untamed heart of the California goldfields. The journey itself has been a trial weeks, perhaps months, of arduous travel by land or sea, leaving behind the comforts and certainties of your former life. Now, you stand in a remote canyon, or beside a rushing river, or in a dry, dusty gulch, ready to begin the work. The morning light, when it finally arrives, offers little warmth in the crisp mountain air. The ground beneath your hastily erected canvas tent or rough lean-to is often damp, perhaps even frozen in the colder months. The scent of pine and damp earth mingles with the ever-present odor of unwashed bodies, stale coffee, and the faint metallic temps of the river. You rouse yourself from a fitful sleep, disturbed by the persistent drone of mosquitoes or the anxious stirrings of fellow prospectors. Breakfast is a meager affair. Hardtack, perhaps, or a portion of tough salt pork washed down with thick black coffee brewed over a sputtering fire. There is no time for leisurely meals. The day's labor begins almost immediately after the first light touches the treetops. You shoulder your pickaxe, your shovel, your heavy pan, or perhaps lug a cumbersome rocker and make your way to your claim. The sensory details of the work itself are relentless. You are working in a stream. The water is shockingly cold, numbing your hands and feet within minutes. The sound of the rushing current is constant, overlaid with the rhythmic scrape of your shovel against gravel, the clink of rocks being discarded, and the splash of water as you swirl your pan. If you are in a dry digging, the dust is pervasive, coating your throat, clinging to your skin, and settling on every surface. The sun beats down with fierce intensity, even through your worn hat, causing sweat to trickle down your temples and sting your eyes. The physical toll is immediate and profound. Your back aches from stooping over the pan or rocking the heavy cradle. Your arms and shoulders burn with the effort of lifting shovelful after shovelful of gravel. Your hands, raw and chapped from constant immersion in cold water or chafed by rough tools, might be covered in blisters. Every muscle protests, but there is no respite. The promise of gold, however elusive, drives you forward hour after monotonous hour. Lunch is usually eaten quickly, right where you work. More hardtack, another slice of dry meat. The taste is bland, the texture unyielding. There is no time for conversation, only the focused effort of digging, sifting, and peering into the bottom of your pan for that glittering hint of yellow. The flies, buzzing persistently, are a minor but constant irritation. As the afternoon wears on, weariness settles deep into your bones. The hope that sparked your morning efforts begins to wane with each empty pan. The vastness of the landscape, once inspiring, can feel crushing in its indifference. You are just one tiny figure among thousands, all performing the same monotonous, physically draining task, driven by the same desperate hope. The sound of distant shouts or the faint ring of another's pickaxe only serves as a reminder of the relentless competition. By the time the sun dips below the horizon, casting long purple shadows across the canyon, your body is protesting with every movement. You gather your meager tools, your muscles screaming in complaint. The walk back to your camp, though short, feels like a monumental effort. Dinner is again simple, often cooked communally, but the conversation is subdued, punctuated by the weary sighs of tired men. Even as darkness falls, bringing a brief coolness to the air, there is little true rest. The ground is hard, the blanket thin. The dreams of gold might tantalize your waking thoughts, or perhaps the crushing reality of another day spent without significant discovery weighs heavily on your mind. The scent of wood smoke and damp clothing fills the air around your small camp. The rhythm of this life is one of constant exertion, persistent discomfort, and the gnawing anxiety of unfulfilled hope. This endless slog, this perpetual cycle of labor and longing, was the often overlooked reality of being a prospector in the American gold rush. As the prospector toils endlessly in the riverbeds, driven by the elusive glimmer of gold, it is worth pausing to consider the man whose grand ambitions were ironically shattered by that very discovery. Our narrative now turns to John Sutter, a Swiss immigrant, whose dreams of an agricultural empire in California were destined to be consumed by the very treasure he helped to reveal. Imagine Sutter in the years leading up to the gold rush. He arrived in California in the late 1830s. a man of considerable ambition and a talent for persuasion. He envisioned a vast, self-sufficient empire in the fertile Sacramento Valley. He acquired enormous tracts of land, established a thriving rancheria, and built a fortified settlement he proudly named New Helvetia, or New Switzerland. The air around his fort, near the confluence of the American and Sacramento rivers, would have carried the scent of freshly sawn lumber, ripe wheat, and the distant lowing of cattle. He cultivated fields, built mills, and employed a diverse workforce of local indigenous peoples, Hawaiians, and European laborers. His vision was not of gold, but of a sprawling agricultural paradise, a testament to his industrious spirit. Sutter was, in many ways, a frontier baron, a man who saw potential in the vast, untamed wilderness. He had worked hard to establish his domain, navigating the complex political landscape of Mexican California, securing land grants and building relationships. His fort became a crucial waypoint for weary travelers reaching the end of the California Trail. A welcome sight, promising respite and supplies. He was a man of immense personal charm, capable of inspiring loyalty and cooperation, qualities that were vital in this wild new territory. Then came the morning of January 24th, 1848. James Marshall, a carpenter employed by Sutter to build a sawmill on the South Fork of the American River, found glittering flakes in the mill's tail race. Imagine that moment. The cold river water, the wooden planks, and then the unmistakable shimmer. Marshall brought the samples to Sutter, who attempted to keep the discovery a secret. The scent of pine from the new lumber, the fresh mountain air, now held a new, dangerous aroma. The intoxicating smell of possibility. Sutter, despite his attempts at secrecy, understood the profound implications. He was reportedly dismayed, knowing that a gold rush would spell the end of his agricultural dream. He attempted to secure his land rights through a treaty with the local Native American tribes, but his efforts were futile. The news, like a flash fire across dry tinder, spread with astonishing speed. Sailors deserted their ships in San Francisco Bay. Farmers abandoned their fields. Even Sutter's own laborers, drawn by the irresistible lure, left his employ. Imagine the sudden, overwhelming chaos that descended upon New Helvetia. Thousands, then tens of thousands of eager prospectors, arriving from every corner of the globe, swarmed over Sutter's lands. His fields were trampled. His timber was stolen. His cattle were slaughtered for food. The sounds of industry, the whirring of millstones, the gentle creak of wagons, were replaced by the incessant din of shovels, the shouts of impatient men, and the chaotic sprawl of makeshift camps. The once orderly vision of New Helvetia dissolved into a muddy, lawless encampment. Sutter's attempts to assert his ownership and control were met with indifference, outright defiance or legal challenges that slowly eroded his claims. He famously appealed to the newly established American courts, but the legal system, overwhelmed and ill-equipped for the unique circumstances of the gold rush, offered him little recourse. His vast land grants, once secured under Mexican law, were disputed and ultimately invalidated. The very ground that held his fortune was deemed open to all. His sawmills, intended to provide timber for his expanding empire, were left idle as workers abandoned them for the goldfields. His agricultural ventures, once the source of his wealth, withered and died. The scent of prosperity was replaced by the odor of decay and financial ruin. In the end, John Sutter, the man on whose land the great discovery was made, died impoverished and largely forgotten by the public that had benefited from his unwitting generosity. His dream of an agricultural paradise was consumed by the very gold that promised fortune to others. His story stands as a poignant reminder that in the chaotic whirlwind of the gold rush, even those at its very epicenter could find themselves utterly undone. His legacy is one of a grand vision, tragically overshadowed by the uncontrollable power of a golden fever. As the echoes of John Sutter's shattered dreams fade, we now turn our attention to another captivating facet of the gold rush: the elusive, sometimes tantalizing, and often tragic tales of lost gold. For every fortune famously won, there were countless others rumored to be hidden, buried, or simply vanished into the vast, unforgiving landscape of the Sierra Nevada. These are the whispers that continue to draw adventurers and dreamers, even today. Imagine the sheer scale of the gold fields. Not just the well-known riverbeds, but countless remote canyons, isolated gulches, and forgotten mountain passes. In the chaotic scramble of the rush, with thousands of individuals often working in isolation or small, desperate groups, it was inevitable that some discoveries would be made and then, for various reasons, lost to history. The motivations for burying gold were numerous. Prospectors, constantly under threat from claim jumpers, highwaymen, or even their own desperate neighbors, often sought to conceal their finds. Imagine burying a leather pouch heavy with nuggets beneath a distinctive tree, or hiding a small cache in a rock crevice, intending to return for it later. But then, illness could strike swiftly, violence could erupt without warning, or the sheer disorientation of the vast wilderness could lead one astray. A simple fever, a sudden ambush, or even just a lost trail could mean that a carefully hidden fortune remained undisturbed, waiting for a ghostly rediscovery. One such legend speaks of the lost cement mine. The story, vague in its origins, often places its location somewhere deep in the Sierra. It tells of a rich vein of gold embedded in a unique, cement-like rock, far from any known major strike. Prospectors would reportedly find small pieces of this rich ore only to lose their way when attempting to return to the source. Imagine a landscape so vast and featureless in certain areas, riddled with similar rock formations, that finding one specific, unmarked spot could be an impossibility. The details shift with each retelling, the descriptions of the gold becoming richer, the location more elusive. This mystery persists because it taps into the fundamental hope of the prospector, that the greatest treasure is always just beyond the visible horizon. Then there are the stories of salted mines, hoaxes concocted by unscrupulous individuals who would plant gold in a seemingly barren claim to defraud unsuspecting buyers. These tales, while not mysteries of lost gold, contribute to the pervasive atmosphere of suspicion and false hope that permeated the gold fields. It was a time when trust was a luxury and desperation a constant companion. Archaeological efforts in the modern era to locate these lost claims or hidden stashes are incredibly challenging. The very nature of the gold rush, ephemeral camps, rapidly shifting riverbeds, landslides, and the sheer passage of time means that physical evidence is often scarce. Imagine the forces of nature at work over a century and a half. Rivers changing course, eroding away one landscape while burying another. Wildfires sweeping through, obliterating landmarks, and seismic activity reshaping valleys. A tree marked by a prospector's axe might have long since fallen and decomposed. A subtle cairn of stones could have been scattered by a winter storm. Despite the difficulties, the allure remains. Modern metal detectorists and amateur historians still comb remote areas, guided by old maps, tattered diaries, or even just local folklore. They seek not just the gold itself, but the echo of those desperate dreams, the tangible connection to a time of wild, untamed ambition. The search is a quiet, meditative act, a testament to the enduring power of these forgotten narratives. The lost gold of the Sierra, whispers of lives cut short, of secrets taken to unmarked graves, and of fortunes that lay tantalizingly close, yet utterly beyond reach. These unresolved claims, these hidden stashes, serve as a gentle reminder that for all the gold that was extracted, much more remains a permanent part of the earth, waiting perhaps for a hand that will never arrive. The mountains hold their secrets closely, and the gold, once the spark of so much hope and despair, now lies undisturbed, a quiet mystery beneath the vast California sky. While countless prospectors toiled in the sun and cold, their bodies aching, their hopes often dwindling, another group of individuals observed the gold rush not as a place to dig for precious metals, but as a fertile ground from which to cultivate fortunes of a different kind. These were the discerning merchants, the shrewd saloon keepers, the calculating gamblers, and, in some darker corners, the orchestrators of involuntary labor, those who recognize that a steady stream of revenue could be drawn not from the earth, but from the pockets of the hopeful and the newly enriched. Imagine, if you will, stepping away from the muddy, chaotic diggings and entering a burgeoning boomtown like Sacramento or San Francisco at the zenith of the rush. The air here carries a different, more complex scent, not of damp earth, but of aged lumber, the faint sweetness of cigar smoke, and perhaps the tempting aroma of freshly baked goods, a rare luxury in the remote camps. The sounds are a distinct shift from the riverbeds, a low hum of commerce, punctuated by the clatter of dice on a polished table, the distant, muffled strains of a piano, and the persuasive cadences of spirited conversation. These towns, often springing up with remarkable speed, were sustained by the unending influx of eager individuals. Merchants, quick to discern the immense demand for goods and the constrained supply, established shops where basic necessities commanded extraordinary prices. Imagine acquiring a single egg for what might seem a princely sum, or a simple shovel for a considerable amount of gold dust. Figures that would appear astonishing in more settled locales, yet were accepted as the implicit cost of entry into the grand gold endeavor. Fortunes accumulated through these transactions were often more substantial and considerably more predictable than any derived directly from the earth. The saloons, in particular, often served as vibrant centers of social activity within these rapidly expanding settlements. They offered fleeting moments of camaraderie, a stage for games of chance, and perhaps a temporary respite from daily anxieties. Imagine the ambient light filtering through the ever-present haze of pipe smoke, illuminating rows of bottles and the weary, hopeful faces of individuals exchanging their hard-won earnings for spirits or the anticipation of a winning hand. The gentle strumming of a guitar or the soft melody from a piano might weave through the general murmur, providing a brief, reflective interlude. For the proprietor of such an establishment, each drink served, each game managed, represented a consistent flow of profit, directly derived from the miners' dwindling supplies of gold dust. Gamblers, too, found a receptive environment amidst this surge of optimistic speculation. Consider the swift, practiced movements at a card table, the quiet intensity surrounding a game of chance, or the vocal pronouncements at a spinning wheel. These individuals, often possessing keen observational skills, understood the psychological landscape of the weary prospector, eager for a swift reversal of fortune to counterbalance their continuous losses. The mathematical advantage, as is often noted, tended to favor the establishment and in the context of the gold rush. That establishment was frequently an astute individual with a growing stack of winnings and a composed demeanor. And then there existed certain individuals who engaged in practices that were far more disquieting, sometimes referred to by terms like Shanghai kings. Imagine an unsuspecting prospector, perhaps celebrating a modest discovery, or more often, seeking solace in a port city such as San Francisco. Such an individual might become disoriented, perhaps through the influence of strong drink, and subsequently find themselves conveyed onto a waiting vessel. Upon awakening, they would discover themselves far out at sea, engaged in an arduous voyage as an involuntary crew member, having been, in essence, compelled into maritime service. This regrettable practice, while not exclusive to the Gold Rush era, witnessed a notable increase as ship captains, contending with their own crew's desertions for the gold fields, resorted to extreme measures to secure labor. Those who orchestrated these forced enlistments accumulated their illicit gains by exploiting the very aspirations that drew so many to California's shores. These figures, the astute merchants, the resourceful saloon keepers, the calculating gamblers, and those involved in less scrupulous activities, offered a notable contrast to the arduous existence of the common prospector. Their hands remained largely unsoiled by the earth, and their financial gains were often more predictable, while the miner contended with the unpredictable elements and the slim odds of discovery. These entrepreneurs established their own forms of prosperity from the constant flow of human desire and the often desperate needs of the populace, their lives. Though perhaps distinct from modern luxury, afforded a measure of comfort, security, and influence that remained largely beyond the reach of the vast majority who dedicated themselves to the physical pursuit of gold. The gold rush, in essence, operated as a powerful engine, fueled by the fervent hope of countless individuals, and adeptly guided by those who recognized how to profit from its relentless churn. As the echoes of picks and shovels fade, and the scent of dust and ambition settles, we conclude our journey into the complex realities of the American gold rush. We have traversed the arduous daily toil of the prospector, glimpsed the ironic tragedy of John Sutter, pondered the enduring mysteries of lost fortunes, and observed the lives of those who built their wealth not directly from the earth, but from the economic currents generated by the hopes and struggles of others. The California Gold Rush was a profound crucible, a period that forged some destinies, brought challenges to many, and undeniably reshaped the landscape of a young nation. For those who embarked on that momentous journey, the radiant promise of gold often veiled a harsh reality of pervasive hardship, a reality that few could truly endure for an extended period. Survival itself became a daily testament to their resilience. As the quiet reflection on this historical era settles, we leave the rugged canyons and the bustling, often chaotic, boomtowns behind. May the gentle hum of history and the tranquil understanding of past human endeavors now guide you into a peaceful and restorative rest. As the day's concerns begin to recede and shadows lengthen into evening, we invite you to embark on a journey through the annals of the past. Tonight, our gaze turns eastward to the vast and often enigmatic expanse of Imperial Russia. Imagine a land of immense beauty, profound spirituality, and chilling contrasts. A world where a single ruler, the Tsar, held absolute dominion over millions. From the windswept steppes to the grand, glittering palaces. Yet, beneath the veneer of imperial power, for the vast majority, life was an intricate dance with hardship, fear, and the pervasive shadow of an unseen authority. Settle in and allow the gentle currents of history to carry you as we delve into the heart of Imperial Russia and perhaps uncover what it was truly like to live under the Tsar's ever-present shadow. Imagine yourself, if you will, not as a visitor observing from a distance, but as a young serf in a remote Russian village during the 18th or 19th century. Your life, from birth, is inextricably tied to the land, and more importantly, to its owner, the landowner or pomeshchik. You are, in essence, a piece of his property, indistinguishable from the soil you till. The air around your small timber hut, known as an izba, carries the pervasive scent of wood smoke, damp earth, and the faint, sometimes acrid, smell of livestock sharing close quarters. In winter, which often stretches for half the year, the cold penetrates every fiber of your being. Imagine the biting winds that whistle through ill-fitting door frames, the persistent chill that clings to your clothes, and the frost that traces intricate patterns on the inside of your single window. Survival is a constant negotiation with the elements. Your day begins before dawn, often in the muted light of an oil lamp or the flickering glow of embers from the stove. Your breakfast is simple, perhaps a bowl of kasha, a thin gruel of buckwheat or oats, or a piece of rye bread, dense and often stale. There is no time for leisure. The fields await. Step outside. The ground might be frozen solid or a vast expanse of mud in the spring thaw, clinging stubbornly to your coarse felt boots. The silence of the vast, snow-covered landscape in winter can be profound, broken only by the crunch of your footsteps, the distant lowing of an animal, or the creak of a distant cart. In summer, the sounds are those of persistent labor, the rhythmic swing of a scythe, the rustle of ripening grain, and the drone of insects. The work is relentless, dictated by the seasons and the demands of the landlord. Imagine bending over the earth, day after day, in scorching summer sun or driving snow, planting, weeding, harvesting. Your muscles ache, your hands become calloused and cracked, and weariness settles deep into your bones. before midday. A significant portion of your harvest, perhaps half or more, belongs directly to your master. The remaining is for your family, a meager sustenance to carry you through the long winter. Your espa, shared with your extended family, is cramped. The air is often thick with the scent of bodies, cooking, and the persistent damp. Hygiene is rudimentary. Illness, when it strikes, sweeps through the village with frightening speed, often without the aid of proper medicine or medical attention. The grim reality of child mortality is a constant, quiet sorrow. The landowner's presence is an invisible, yet omnipresent force. His steward might arrive to collect dues, to levy a punishment, or to simply observe your toil. Imagine the knot in your stomach, the quickening of your breath when you hear the distant hoofbeats of his overseer's horse. Your very life, your marriage, the upbringing of your children, even the possibility of travel, all are subject to his arbitrary will. Beatings were common, and the dreaded threat of being sold, perhaps separated from your family, hung like a dark cloud over every interaction. Even celebrations, like weddings or religious festivals, are brief respites, often tinged with the underlying awareness of your constrained existence. The sound of folk songs might carry on the wind, accompanied by the stomping of dance. But beneath the merriment, the harsh rhythm of a serf's life continues unabated. As night falls, bringing a profound darkness to the vast, undeveloped countryside, you return to your asba. The meager fire casts flickering shadows on the rough-hewn walls. Sleep, when it comes, is often a heavy oblivion, a temporary escape from the constant physical exertion and the psychological burden of being owned. This endless winter, this relentless grip of the land and the landlord, this pervasive lack of personal freedom. It was the often overlooked reality of being a serf in Imperial Russia. From the silent, arduous life of the serf, we now ascend, if only in narrative, to the glittering, yet increasingly fragile apex of Russian society, the imperial court. Here, amidst the lavish balls and the weighty decisions of state, a most unlikely figure would emerge from the Siberian wilderness to cast a long, unsettling shadow over the Romanov dynasty. Our focus now turns to Grigory Rasputin, a man whose enigmatic presence and profound influence defied all logic, and ultimately deepened the cracks within an already strained empire. Imagine the opulence of the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg, or the serene grandeur of Tsarskoye Selo. The air would be rich with the scent of imported silks, fine perfumes, and the faint, sweet aroma of exotic flowers. The sounds would be of hushed conversations, the rustle of elaborate gowns, and the distant, measured tread of guards. Into this highly stratified and formal world, a peasant from Siberia, unkempt and charismatic, seemingly stepped from another dimension. Grigory Efimovich Rasputin was born into a peasant family in a remote Siberian village in the 1860s. He developed a reputation as a mystic, a holy man, a strannik, or pilgrim, possessing unusual spiritual insight and, crucially, a perceived ability to heal. His journey to St. Petersburg was a gradual one, marked by encounters with various religious figures and increasingly influential socialites who were drawn to his raw, conventional piety and hypnotic gaze. His introduction to the imperial family in 1905 came through court circles intrigued by spiritualism and mysticism, common fascinations among the elite of that era. But his true, unwavering hold on the Romanovs, particularly Empress Alexandra, stemmed from a singular, heartbreaking circumstance. Her young son, Alexei the Tsarevich, suffered from hemophilia, a debilitating and often fatal blood disorder. Western medicine offered little relief, and the royal couple lived in constant anguish over their heir's fragile health. Imagine the desperation of a mother watching her beloved child suffer. When Rasputin was brought to Alexei's side and seemed through prayer or presence to alleviate the boy's suffering or stop his bleeding, he became, in the eyes of the Empress, a divine messenger, a man sent by God to save her son. The effect was profound and immediate. The scent of fear and despair within the royal chambers was for a time replaced by the faint hope he offered. This perceived ability granted Rasputin unparalleled access to the highest echelons of power. His influence, initially confined to matters of Alexei's health, gradually expanded. He began to offer advice on political appointments, on military strategy, and even on the private lives of the royal family. The sounds of hushed whispers and gossip surrounding him grew louder, spreading through the court and beyond. His unconventional appearance, his coarse manners, and his rumored scandalous behavior stood in stark contrast to the refined world he now inhabited. The tension between his peasant origins and his imperial access was a constant, unsettling presence. The aristocracy and the political establishment, increasingly alarmed by his sway, viewed him with a mixture of disdain, fear, and profound suspicion. They saw him as a symbol of the monarchy's detachment from reality, a dangerous charlatan undermining the stability of the empire at a time of growing unrest. Reports of his drinking, his philandering, and his increasingly bold political pronouncements created an atmosphere of scandal and mistrust that eroded public confidence in the Tsar and Tsarina. As Russia plunged into the First World War, and Tsar Nicholas II departed to personally command the army at the front, Empress Alexandra was left to govern, largely influenced by Rasputin. Imagine the mounting frustrations, military defeats, food shortages in the cities, and the persistent, unsettling rumors of Rasputin's control over the Empress. The air in St. Petersburg grew thick with discontent, not only from the struggling populace, but from within the very fabric of the ruling class. The decision to eliminate Rasputin became, for a small group of aristocratic conspirators, a desperate act to save the monarchy itself. The events of December 1916, culminating in his dramatic and seemingly impossible death, poisoned, shot, and finally drowned in the icy Neva River, were a chaotic end to a life that had defied convention at every turn. Imagine the frantic desperation of his assailants, the chilling finality of his submersion beneath the frozen surface. Yet, his death did not bring the desired stability. Instead, it only served to further highlight the deep rot within the imperial system. Rasputin's rise and fall remained a testament to the vulnerability of absolute power when confronted by superstition, desperation, and the charismatic influence of an outsider. His shadow, far from dissipating, seemed to linger over the final tragic years of the Romanov dynasty, a silent harbinger of the tumultuous future. From the tumultuous personal drama of the imperial court, our journey now shifts to a different kind of mystery, one shrouded in the mists of history and the shadows of a great conflict. We turn our attention to an object of unparalleled beauty and immense historical significance, the Amber Room, a true marvel of the world, which vanished without a trace amidst the chaos of the Second World War. Its disappearance remains one of the most intriguing art mysteries of all time. Imagine a chamber, approximately 55 square meters in size, entirely adorned with panels of intricately carved amber. The walls shimmered with the warm, golden glow of millions of individual pieces of amber, painstakingly fitted together like a mosaic, interwoven with gold leaf, precious stones, and mirrors. The air within such a room would have carried a faint, resinous scent, distinct and ancient. The light, filtering through the amber, would have cast a soft, ethereal illumination, creating a sense of unparalleled opulence and wonder. The Amber Room's story began in the early 18th century. It was originally commissioned for Frederick I, the first king of Prussia, for his Charlottenburg Palace in Berlin. Imagine the painstaking craftsmanship involved. Skilled artisans dedicating years to shaping and polishing this fossilized tree resin, transforming it into exquisite works of art. The room was a testament to the Baroque era's grandeur and a symbol of royal power and wealth. However, its destiny was intertwined with the shifting alliances of European monarchies. In 1716, Peter the Great of Russia, a ruler famously enamored with Western European culture, admired the Amber Room during a visit to Prussia. As a gesture of diplomatic goodwill and friendship, King Frederick William I, Frederick the First's son, gifted the complete amber room to Peter. Imagine the monumental task of disassembling such an intricate work of art, packing it carefully, and transporting it across vast distances to Russia. Upon its arrival, the Amber Room was eventually installed in the Catherine Palace at Tsarskoye Selo, near St. Petersburg. Here, it became an even more spectacular centerpiece, often enlarged and embellished by subsequent Russian empresses, like Elizabeth and Catherine the Great. The sounds within its walls would have been those of whispered court intrigue, the rustle of elegant gowns, and the soft strains of chamber music during lavish imperial gatherings. For over 2 centuries, it remained a jewel of Russian imperial art, a silent witness to Romanov history. Then came the cataclysm of the Second World War. As Nazi German forces advanced swiftly into the Soviet Union in 1941, the cultural treasures of Russia, including those at the Catherine Palace, became targets. Soviet curators, understanding the immense value and fragility of the Amber Room, attempted to dismantle it. Imagine the desperate efforts, carefully trying to unfasten the delicate amber panels, knowing that time was running out. However, the amber had become brittle with age, and the task proved too daunting under the immense pressure and limited time. Instead, the room was covered with wallpaper in a futile attempt to disguise its true nature. The German forces swiftly overran Tsarskoye Selo. They discovered the Amber Room, methodically dismantled it in just 36 hours, crated its components, and transported them by rail to Kingsburg in East Prussia. Here, it was reassembled and put on display in the Kingsburg Castle Museum. Imagine the final, desperate days of the war as Soviet forces began their relentless advance into German territory. In 1944, as Kingsburg came under heavy bombing, the Amber Room was once again disassembled and placed into crates. And then silence. After January 1945, as Kingsburg fell to the Red Army, the Amber Room was never seen again. Its fate remains one of the greatest unsolved art mysteries. Numerous theories have emerged over the decades. Was it destroyed by Allied bombing during the fierce fighting for Kingsburg Castle? Was it meticulously hidden by the retreating German forces in a secret bunker or tunnel network, perhaps somewhere in the vast, unexplored territories of Eastern Europe? Did it sink with a German ship attempting to transport it by sea? Archaeologists, historians, and treasure hunters have pursued countless leads over the years, from submerged ships in the Baltic Sea to subterranean bunkers in Poland and Germany. Each tantalizing clue, each new theory adds another layer to its enigmatic story. Yet, despite extensive searches, the warm, golden glow of the Amber Room remains elusive, lost to the shadows of history. It stands as a powerful symbol of beauty, ambition, and the devastating. Its fate, unknown, continues to whisper its silent questions across the centuries. From the somber mysteries of the Amber Room, our narrative now ascends to the very pinnacle of Russian society, the imperial court. This was a world of breathtaking opulence, glittering with jewels and ancient traditions. Yet it was also a place increasingly fraught with hidden tensions, constant intrigue, and a growing sense of detachment from the vast empire it supposedly governed. Imagine yourself, if you will, at a grand ball in the Winter Palace, the Tsar's magnificent residence in St. Petersburg. The air is thick with the scent of beeswax candles, expensive perfumes, and the sweet aroma of exotic flowers arranged in colossal displays. The sounds are a symphony of whispered conversations. The rustle of voluminous silk gowns, the soft clink of champagne glasses, and the elegant strains of a live orchestra playing waltzes and polkas. The enormous halls, adorned with intricate frescoes, gilded molding, and countless mirrors, reflect the dancing light, creating an overwhelming sense of grandeur. Life for the Romanov aristocracy and their clothes. Circle was defined by a meticulous adherence to court etiquette and an endless cycle of social engagements. Days were spent in formal receptions, carefully orchestrated visits, and equestrian pursuits in the vast imperial parks. Evenings were dominated by lavish dinners, theatrical performances, and the glittering balls, where social standing and political influence were subtly yet fiercely negotiated. The exquisite fabrics, the elaborate hairstyles, the weight of inherited jewels, all spoke of immense wealth and power. A stark contrast to the rough textures and meager possessions of the serf. However, beneath this polished surface, a different reality simmered. The imperial court was, in many ways, a gilded cage. While living in unparalleled luxury, the Romanovs, peculiarly as the 19th century gave way to the 20th, became increasingly isolated from the burgeoning social and political unrest gripping their empire. Information often reached them filtered through layers of loyal but sometimes fearful courtiers. The voices of discontent in the sprawling cities, the rumblings of famine in the countryside. These often sounded like distant, muffled echoes within the insulated world of the palace walls. Intrigue was a constant companion. Imagine the subtle power plays among ambitious ministers, the hushed conspiracies hatched by discontented nobles, and the constant maneuvering for the Tsar's favor by various factions. The threat of political assassination, though less overt than in earlier centuries, was a pervasive anxiety, particularly as revolutionary sentiments gained ground. Every seemingly casual conversation, every minor slight, could hold hidden implications for one's position or even one's life. Trust was a rare and precious commodity in this environment of constant scrutiny. The Tsar himself, Nicholas II, despite his absolute power, often found himself caught in this intricate web. He inherited an empire facing immense challenges, from rapid industrialization to burgeoning social movements. Yet he was raised in an environment that emphasized unwavering autocracy and divine right. Imagine the weight of this inherited legacy, the immense burden of attempting to steer a vast traditional empire through an era of profound change. His life, though outwardly magnificent, was consumed by administrative duties and ceremonial obligations, often leaving little room for genuine connection or broad understanding of the people he ruled. The imperial court, with its strict protocols and lavish displays, became a symbol not just of power, but of an escalating disconnect. While revolutionary ideas gained traction in the streets and factories, the court continued its elaborate dance, seemingly oblivious to the seismic shifts occurring just beyond its grand gates. The sounds of revelry within the palace provided an ironic counterpoint to the growing unrest, creating an unsettling discord. This insulated existence, this perpetual performance of power, ultimately contributed to the weakening of the very foundation it sought to preserve, leading in time to its dramatic and final collapse. As the echoes of imperial grandeur fade and the scent of history settles around us, we conclude our exploration of life under the Tsar's shadow in Imperial Russia. We have traversed the arduous daily toil of the serf, witnessed the unsettling influence of Rasputin, pondered the mysterious disappearance of the Amber Room, and observed the intricate, yet increasingly isolated world of the imperial court. Imperial Russia was a land of stark, often brutal contrasts, a society where profound hardship existed alongside unimaginable luxury, where unwavering faith mingled with deep superstition, and where immense power struggled to maintain control in the face of relentless change. For those who lived within its vast embrace, life was often a delicate balance between endurance and hope, resilience and submission. As the quiet reflection on this complex historical era settles, we leave behind the frozen fields and the gilded palaces. May the gentle hum of history and the tranquil understanding of past human experiences now guide you into a peaceful and restorative rest. The Tsar's shadow may have once loomed large over a nation, but tonight only tranquility remains. Our journey through the vastness of Imperial Russia has illuminated the profound contrasts of a society defined by absolute power, from the silent endurance of the serf to the glittering yet fragile world of the Romanov court. We've seen how ambition, faith, and the relentless currents of history can shape and sometimes shatter even the most formidable empires. Now, let us gently shift our gaze across continents and centuries, leaving behind the snowy plains and the intricate palaces of the Tsars. We will travel far to the southeast to an age even more ancient, and to an empire equally grand, built on a different kind of power. The power of commerce and vast interconnectedness. Settle deeper into the quiet as we prepare to traverse the legendary Silk Road, not through the romanticized lens of exotic goods and daring adventures, but to truly understand what trade and empire really cost in the sprawling heart of ancient Persia. We will move beyond the tales of glory to uncover the daily hardships, the hidden perils, and the often overlooked human stories that underpinned one of history's most vital economic arteries. As the day's concerns begin to recede and shadows lengthen into evening, we invite you to embark on a journey through the annals of the past. Tonight, our path leads us to a realm of ancient splendor and vast horizons, the Achaemenid Persian Empire. Imagine a civilization that stretched from the Aegean Sea to the Indus Valley, a colossal power unified not just by armies, but by an intricate network of roads and the steady flow of goods. We often envision the Silk Road as a romantic tapestry of exotic silks and spices carried by intrepid adventurers. But beneath this shimmering surface lay a reality of profound hardship and constant peril for those who truly walked its dusty paths. Trade was not merely an exchange of goods, but an exchange of endurance for survival. Settle in and allow the gentle currents of history to carry you as we delve into the heart of ancient Persia, and perhaps uncover what trade truly cost in an empire built on vast connections. Imagine yourself, if you will, not as a wealthy noble contemplating a map, but as a caravaneer, a merchant, or perhaps even a humble porter embarking on a long-distance journey across the vast expanses of the Persian Empire's trade routes. Your livelihood, your very future, rests upon the successful transport of goods across landscapes that are as beautiful as they are unforgiving. The morning dawns with a surprising chill, even in the desert. The air, before the sun climbs, is dry and sharp, carrying the scent of dust, damp animal hides, and the faint, familiar aroma of dried dates and barley cakes. You rouse yourself from a fitful sleep on the hard, cold ground, your body stiffed from the previous day's travel. The sounds are of stirring animals, the soft lowing of camels, the gentle snorts of horses, and the quiet, rhythmic clatter of packing as loads are carefully secured. Your breakfast is simple, perhaps a handful of dried fruit, a piece of tough bread, and water from a leather skin that is already losing its morning coolness. There is no time for dawdling. The caravan must move with the rising sun, maximizing the cooler hours before the desert truly awakens. Step onto the path. The ground beneath your sandals or worn boots is often fine, shifting sand that slips beneath your feet, or rough, stony terrain that bruises and tests your endurance. As the sun climbs, its intensity becomes relentless. Imagine the scorching heat beating down on your head, radiating upwards from the ground, seeming to bake the very air you breathe. The dust, disturbed by dozens of hooves and feet, rises in a persistent, choking cloud, coating your tongue, settling on your skin, and clinging to your clothing. Your throat becomes parched, your lips cracked, and a deep, gnawing thirst begins to set in. The journey is a monotonous rhythm of walking or riding for endless hours under the vast, indifferent sky. The sounds are repetitive. The soft padding of camel hooves, the creak of laden carts, the occasional clink of a metal saddle. Conversation is often limited, reserved for brief moments of rest or for urgent warnings. The vastness of the landscape, while awe-inspiring in its scale, can also feel crushing in its emptiness, a seemingly endless expanse of sand and rock under an unblinking sun. Water, the most precious commodity, is carefully rationed. Imagine the feel of a small sip of lukewarm, slightly metallic-tasting water on your dry tongue, stretched to last until the next well or oasis, which might be days away. The fear of an empty water skin is a constant, subtle anxiety. The threat of bandits, though often unspoken, is always present. You are carrying valuable goods, a temptation for those who live outside the law. Imagine the heightened tension, the quick glances at distant dust clouds, the tightening grip on a simple staff or blade when passing through narrow canyons or isolated passes. As evening approaches, the desert transforms. The heat recedes, and a surprising chill descends. The colors of the sky shift from blazing orange to deep violet, and then to the profound blackness of a star-filled night. Setting up camp is a familiar, weary task, unburdening animals, gathering what little dry fuel can be found for a small, flickering fire, preparing a meager meal of dried meat and boiled grain. The taste is bland, but it is sustenance. Sleep beneath the open sky or a simple tent is often broken. The distant cry of a desert animal, the shifting sands, or simply the gnawing physical discomfort can prevent deep rest. Even in slumber, the body remembers the day's strains. This endless journey, this constant battle against thirst, dust, and danger. This pervasive physical and mental strain. It was the often overlooked reality of being a caravaner on the ancient trade routes of Persia. As the dust of the caravan settles and the harsh realities of the trade routes become clearer, it is important to understand the colossal political structure that allowed such extensive commerce to flourish. Our narrative now turns to a figure of immense historical significance, a visionary leader who laid the very foundations for this vast, interconnected world. Cyrus the Great, the founder of the Achaemenid Persian Empire. Imagine a time in the 6th century BCE, when the landscape of the ancient Near East was a patchwork of warring kingdoms and competing powers. Into this fragmented world emerged Cyrus, a king whose ambition and strategic brilliance would forever alter the course of history. The air around his early campaigns would have resonated with the distant sounds of marching armies and the whispers of shifting allegiances. Cyrus began as the ruler of a relatively small Persian kingdom, a vassal state under the Median Empire. His rise to power was not merely through brute force, but through a calculated blend of military prowess and shrewd diplomacy. He first unified the various Persian tribes, bringing them under his banner. Imagine the gatherings of tribal leaders, the negotiations, the forging of a shared identity among disparate groups. The scent of campfires and horse sweat would have been pervasive in these early, formative years. His first major conquest was against his former overlords, the Medes. This victory, achieved with strategic precision, was significant not only for its military outcome, but for Cyrus's innovative approach afterward. Instead of brutal subjugation, he often extended a measure of clemency and respect to the conquered. He presented himself not as a foreign conqueror, but as a liberator, a king who honored local customs and deities. This was a radical departure from the harsh Assyrian and Babylonian empires that preceded him. The most famous testament to this approach is perhaps his conquest of Babylon in 539 BCE. Imagine the immense fortified walls of Babylon, a city considered impregnable. Yet, Cyrus's forces, through ingenious strategy, reportedly by diverting the Euphrates River to allow his troops to enter the city through the dry riverbed, gained entry with surprising ease. The sounds of a city falling were muted, replaced by the sounds of transition, not outright destruction. After taking the city, Cyrus did not plunder its temples or enslave its people. Instead, he allowed the Jewish exiles who had been held captive in Babylon for decades to return to their homeland and rebuild their temple. This policy, famously recorded on the Cyrus cylinder, an ancient clay barrel inscription, cemented his reputation for benevolent rule. This approach was not merely an act of kindness. It was a stroke of profound political genius. By respecting the diverse cultures, religions, and traditions of the peoples he conquered, Cyrus fostered stability and loyalty. Imagine the subtle shift in atmosphere in newly acquired territories, from fear and resistance to a sense of belonging within a larger, powerful, but relatively tolerant framework. Flourish through cooperation rather than constant suppression. Under Cyrus, the empire expanded rapidly, absorbing Lydia in Anatolia, and then stretching eastward towards Central Asia. His ambition was not just conquest, but the creation of a vast, unified dominion, connected by efficient administration and reliable infrastructure. He laid the groundwork for what would become the Royal Road, a network of arteries that allowed messages and goods to travel with unprecedented speed across thousands of kilometers. The scent of organized efficiency began to permeate the vast administrative centers he established. Cyrus the Great died in battle, though the exact circumstances remain a subject of historical debate. Yet, his legacy was immense. He created an empire that was not just vast in size, but revolutionary in its approach to governance. He established a template for imperial rule that would endure for centuries and influence subsequent empires, including the Romans. His vision of a multi-ethnic, interconnected realm where diverse peoples could coexist under a single, overarching authority was fundamental to the very existence of the vast trade routes that would become known as the Silk Road. He built the stable framework that allowed the caravans to traverse such immense distances, linking the scattered corners of his colossal domain. From the strategic brilliance of Cyrus the Great, who envisioned a unified empire, we now turn our attention to one of his most enduring and vital legacies, the Royal Road. This wasn't merely a path. It was a colossal feat of ancient engineering and administration, the very backbone that allowed the Persian Empire to govern its vast territories and, crucially, to facilitate the immense flow of goods and information. Imagine a ribbon of carefully constructed roadway stretching for over 2,500 kilometers. From Sardis in modern-day Turkey all the way to Susa, one of Persia's great capitals. The ground beneath this monumental artery was often paved with stone, particularly in mountainous or marshy regions, or meticulously leveled earth in flatter expanses. Along its length, every 20 to 30 kilometers stood a series of purpose-built relay stations. These were not just simple stops. They were vital hubs, offering fresh horses for royal couriers, secure lodging, and a steady supply of provisions. The air around these relay stations would have been a blend of scents: the earthy smell of stables, the faint aroma of cooking fires, and the ever-present scent of dust carried by the wind. The sounds would have been distinct from the open road: the clatter of arriving chariots or horsemen, the shouts of stable hands, the murmur of travelers resting before continuing their arduous journeys. These stations were the beating heart of the road, points of vital exchange in the vast, quiet landscape. The building of such a road was an immense undertaking, a testament to the organizational power of the Persian Empire. Imagine thousands of laborers working under the fierce sun or in challenging terrains, meticulously surveying, leveling, and constructing. It was a long, arduous process, demanding human effort on a colossal scale. While we do not dwell on the specifics of their toil, their collective labor provided the very foundation for the empire's connectivity. Along the royal road also existed what we might call its silent sentinels. These were the imperial guards and administrators positioned at key points and in the relay stations, whose task it was to ensure the road's security and efficiency. Imagine their watchful eyes scanning the horizon, their presence a subtle deterrent to bandits, and their meticulous records tracking the movement of imperial messengers and official goods. Their routine was one of constant vigilance, their lives intertwined with the rhythm of the road. Archaeological findings along the suspected path of the royal road have slowly begun to unearth its secrets. Excavations have revealed remnants of these ancient stations, foundations of sturdy buildings, fragments of pottery from diverse regions, and even ancient coins that speak of the bustling commerce that once transpired there. Imagine the quiet satisfaction of an archaeologist unearthing a piece of pottery, a mundane object that nonetheless provides a tangible link to the lives of those who traversed this ancient highway. These discoveries provide glimpses into the daily grind of travelers and the logistical precision of the imperial administration. The royal road facilitated far more than just the movement of goods. It was a conduit for imperial control, allowing the king's decrees to reach the furthest corners of his empire with remarkable speed. It also served as a pathway for cultural exchange, bringing together diverse peoples and ideas from across the vast Persian dominion. Imagine the exchange of languages, of stories, of customs, as merchants from distant lands paused at the same well or shared a meal at the same caravanserai. The subtle influences, the blending of traditions, occurred along these very routes, a quiet evolution unfolding with each passing caravan. This vast network, meticulously maintained, was the physical manifestation of the empire's power and its administrative genius. It was an artery that carried not just precious metals and exotic spices, but also the very lifeblood of a sprawling civilization. The royal road, with its silent sentinels and its enduring legacy, stands as a quiet monument to the ingenuity and sheer scale of the Persian Empire, a testament to what was truly required to connect and control such colossal ancient world. As the dust of the royal road settles behind us, and the weary steps of the caravaneer fade from our imagination, we now ascend to a different realm within the vast Persian Empire. Our gaze turns to the life of the satrap, the powerful provincial governor, a figure who embodied imperial authority and often lived a life of considerable extravagance, a stark contrast to the daily struggles we have previously explored. Imagine yourself not trekking across the desert, but standing within the cool shaded courtyards of a satrapal palace. This would be a sprawling complex, perhaps in a city like Sardis or Memphis, far from the central capitals of Susa or Persepolis. The air here would be still and heavy with the scent of cultivated gardens, exotic flowers, and perhaps the subtle aroma of fine foods being prepared in distant kitchens. The sounds would be hushed. The gentle trickle of water from fountains, the soft rustle of silken garments, and the measured footsteps of servants and guards. The satrap's daily life was a delicate balance of immense responsibility and profound luxury. As the king's eye or a king's ear, he was the monarch's direct representative in a vast province, often encompassing diverse peoples and cultures. His duties were extensive, maintaining law and order, collecting taxes, administering justice, overseeing local governance, and commanding the provincial garrisons. Imagine the stacks of clay tablets or papyrus scrolls bearing official correspondence, the constant stream of petitioners seeking decisions, and the strategic planning required to keep a vast territory aligned with imperial will. His palace was not merely a residence. It was a center of power, a miniature reflection of the great royal courts. Imagine rooms adorned with rich tapestries, floors laid with intricate mosaics, and furniture crafted from precious woods. Banquets would be frequent and elaborate, designed to display the satrap's wealth and to entertain local dignitaries, military commanders, and visiting imperial officials. The aromas of roasted lamb, spiced wines, and foreign delicacies would fill the air, a stark contrast to the simple provisions of the common traveler. Musicians might play gentle melodies on lyres and flutes, providing a soothing backdrop to conversations of state. The satrap also commanded a significant personal military force, providing a vital layer of security and projecting imperial power throughout the province. Imagine the sight of his personal guard, richly uniformed, standing silently at the palace gates or accompanying him on inspections of distant towns. This military authority was crucial for suppressing local unrest, deterring external threats, and ensuring the smooth flow of tribute back to the central treasury. Despite their immense power and wealth, the satraps operated under the constant shadow of the great king. Their loyalty was paramount, and any perceived sign of disloyalty or excessive ambition could lead to swift and severe consequences. Royal inspectors, known as king's eyes or king's ears, would periodically travel through the provinces, subtly assessing the satrap's performance and loyalty. Imagine the subtle tension, the careful maintenance of appearances when such an inspector arrived. The scent of a perfectly executed feast, the sight of a meticulously managed province, all were part of a continuous performance for the distant emperor. The satrap's existence served as a vital bridge between the absolute power of the great king and the diverse populations of the sprawling empire. Their luxurious lives were a tangible reward for their immense responsibilities, but also a constant reminder of the hierarchical structure that underpinned the entire Persian world. This life of both privilege and perpetual vigilance provided the stable, controlled environment within which the vast trade networks could operate, allowing luxury goods to flow to the elite and imperial control to reach its furthest frontiers. As the echoes of imperial splendor fade and the scent of ancient dust settles around us, we conclude our exploration of the Persian Empire and the true costs of its interconnectedness. We have traversed the endless, perilous journeys of the desert caravaner, witnessed the visionary genius of Cyrus the Great, explored the silent, vital arteries of the royal road, and observed the contrasting lives of the powerful satraps who governed distant provinces. Ancient Persia was a civilization of unparalleled scale, unified by its ambition, its intricate administration, and its monumental infrastructure. For those who built it, maintained it, and traversed its vast expanses, life was often a testament to human endurance, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of sustenance or fortune. The romanticized image of the Silk Road, in reality, rested upon the very real daily struggles and profound organizational prowess of an empire that linked East and West. As the quiet reflection on this remarkable historical era settles, we leave behind the scorching deserts and the opulent palaces. May the gentle hum of history and the tranquil understanding of past human endeavors now guide you into a peaceful and restorative rest. The glories of the Silk Road may have once shimmered brightly, but tonight only tranquility remains.